There is a paradox at the heart of the very concept of a remake, remaster, reprobate, whatever you want to call them. On the one hand, they reflect... oh, reflection, there's another one. They reflect a desire to appeal to older nostalgic audiences who prefer the rose-tinted then to the ever-ambivalent now. But at the same time, there are so many games that could potentially be remade, the choice of what gets the treatment has to be rooted in the game somehow holding appeal for new audiences as well. With that in mind, what do you think it was that suggested the time was right for a Gothic remake? What was it about the current era that made the publisher believe that audiences had an appetite for getting viciously punched in the face everywhere they turn while being mocked by vastly more powerful entities? Well, I'll leave the subtext to answer that question. Yes, the Gothic remake, that's literally what it calls itself on the title screen, which I appreciate, none of this Gothic Resurrected or Gothic Reykjavik nonsense. So I began things on a high note, like a man jauntily whistling as he confidently steps onto the surface of a frozen lake. Gothic is an open-world third-person RPG from 2001, an age when we collectively kind of knew how to make such things, but were still ironing out the kinks. Sort of the equivalent of the era of medicine when they knew how to saw off a leg, but not how to make it not hurt like buggery. What feels odd right off the bat is that there's no character customization. We're locked in as generic, vaguely roguish white bloke. But perhaps this is me being spoiled by basically every RPG since, letting me customize everything from cheekbone depth to length of employment prospects, and I need to set expectations back to retro standards, ergo constant disappointment. Anyway, turns out in this generic fantasy world, a bunch of wizards tried to create their own version of PUBG by putting a magic barrier around a penal colony. But something fucked up, and now no one can get out, and the prisoners have taken over the place and making all kinds of crazy, unreasonable demands for food, dignity, and poontang. As a new prisoner, we're given a message to take to a community of mages trapped inside and shoved through the barrier, at which point a small welcoming party picks us up, dusts us down, and decks us in the face. Which, notionally, I think, is an encapsulation of the experience of playing Gothic, especially early on. You go somewhere, you get decked in the face. You try to achieve something, you get decked in the face. You adjust the master volume slider, you get decked in the face more quietly. The point I've been madly Charlestoning around all video is that Gothic is really fucking unforgiving, and I'm not sure what I did to offend it. As could perhaps be inferred by the lack of a moustache curve slider, it's quite appreciably straightforward gameplay-wise. Here's how you attack, here's how you dodge, you've got a strength stat for melee weapons and a dexterity stat for ranged, and that's more or less it. Go down this mountain pass, and here's a starting sword, here's a single rat that we've basically nailed to the floor for you. Why not get to grips with the combat? But after I encroached, I discovered I'd apparently picked a fight with the rodent equivalent of Ivan Drago, who bit off my leg with his first nibble and bit off my other leg with the second. And this was the shape of things to come. What made this the easy mode tutorial fight for babies was that this guinea pig-shaped ballistic missile actually took 2 hits to kill me instead of just 1. I ran into a wolf on the way to the first camp and experimentally tried my luck, and the most my rusty sword could do was give him affectionate scritchies before he proceeded to bite my entire torso off. I suppose what I was waiting for was the moment when the player character demonstrates their qualifications for protagonist status, and that just wasn't happening. I show up at the camp and an ugly dude in a potato sack rocks up and says, "Hey, pay me protection money or get duffed up." And I thought, aha, this was the moment. The classic cathartic bullies chose the wrong target scene, except my sword proceeded to clip off the latter 1/1,000,000th of his health bar, and then he decks me to the ground in one blow, and stole all my money and sword. Hey, game, why don't you send that guy on the epic quest? Feels like that'd be a lot more efficient. I couldn't even give the letter to the mages because they wouldn't let me into the inner circle of the camp until I proved myself by doing a succession of things that were at that point completely beyond me. Hey, beat up the weakest fighter in the arena who can inevitably one-shot you. Hey, go pick up something from a different camp that's 2 miles of wolves, crocodiles, and velociraptors away. If I could just find something to give me an edge on the fucking wolves. Hey, I'm a wizard and can teach you how to do a basic firebolt. Great, what do you need? Well, first I need you to kill 2 wolves. Everywhere I went, it was like Sideshow Bob and the fucking Rakes, and this doesn't feel like a get good scenario. It just felt more like everything except me had their damage numbers cranked up way too high. It doesn't feel tough but fair when hitting a rat with a heavy pointy piece of metal does the same damage as him brushing me with his whiskers. I decided to get all thoughts of heroism out of my mind and just focus on finding a way, any way, to get onto some kind of upgrade track, and I hit upon the idea of buying a bow and arrow. What's a wolf gonna do if I'm out of range? Projectile vomit his teeth at me? So I spent some time exploring about a 10-foot radius around the camp, fervently gathering herbs to sell with quick save bound to the middle mouse button, and incidentally this is the point the looping generic medieval music that plays the entire time started really getting on my tits, bringing to mind the annoying minstrels that kept following Sir Robin around. I eventually scraped up enough pennies to buy my bow. I took it into the field and shortly discovered that no, a wolf can't do much about an arrow at range, but it can do quite a lot about a dude standing there like a lemon pulling back his bowstring for the approximate duration of the average commencement address. Still, with grit, patience, and prodigious quick save, I nickel and dimed my way up to being able to win fights against farmyard hens and could expand my horizons a bit. Found a mine where you can literally gather infinite free money if you've got the patience to watch an overlong pickaxe swinging animation an infinite number of times, and that helped improve my kit. So finally I became a made man with the first camp and completed the letter delivery to the mages that had been my entire purpose in life, whereupon the mage at the door said, "Thanks, numbnuts, now piss off," which might have broken a lesser man, but sheer time spent in this world had invested me enough to keep going, and I found that now I'd grinded up to the status of what would be a level 1 character in any other RPG, the game had shifted from soul-crushing to merely boring. It's neat that monsters don't respawn immediately, it makes you feel like you are making an impact, but so much of the questing involves backing and forthing between the main camp and the mine and the other camp with all the split up weirdos, and with the monsters all dead and no fast travel, it's just repeated prolonged nature hikes. In the end, it was this rather than the difficulty that broke me, because I was on a main quest in the mines to gather support for a stand against a nest of monster spiders, and one of the weirdo camp dudes was like, "I'll help if you get me 3 spliffs," and faced with the prospect of backing all the way out of the mine, trekking to the weirdo camp on the other side of the map, finding the dope dealer, and then hot-footing all the way back, I decided Gothic had ceased to amuse. No. Enough. I'm not doing that just to restock your stash. I'm not a fucking designated driver at Burning Man. So, the results of the Summer Game Drought Review Viewer's Choice Patreon vote are in. Things were getting pretty heated between the Danganronpa and Factorio fans for a while, but then to my surprise over the weekend the fucking Slay the Princess fans came out of nowhere and overtook them on the inside, so congratulations Slay the Princess. You'll get a full review soon-ish. If you missed out, don't worry, you can always join the Patreon in time for next year's vote, and in the meantime you'll be helping support the channel and can enjoy all sorts of extra content. I've got a new lore read coming out soon covering the Mega Man series, and at the moment we're doing a trilogy of videos where a bunch of us debate which Dark Souls bosses would make the best roommates. A jolly, weighty and informative debate, you'll no doubt agree. Come along to patreon.com/secondwindgroup and consider signing up. That's patreon.com/secondwindgroup, not just patreon.com/secondwind. That's someone else.